The perfect life before the fall. I used to believe that hard work was the key to happiness, that if I gave my all, put in the sweat and hours, my family would never lack anything. For years, that belief held true. I was a roofer, one of the best in Indianapolis. It wasn't glamorous, but it put food on the table, kept the lights on, and gave my wife, Jasmine, the kind of comfort she deserved. Jasmine. My God, she was everything. Young, breathtakingly beautiful, with a smile that could bring a man to his knees. I still remember the first time I saw her. Curly black hair, warm brown skin, and those deep, knowing eyes. She was barely 22 when we married, and I thanked God every day that a woman like her had chosen a guy like me. We had 2 kids together, Aiden, 6, and Olivia, 3. My world revolved around them. On weekends, we'd go to the park, grab ice cream, and just be a family. I worked hard so Jasmine could stay home with the kids, though sometimes she talked about getting a job. I always told her, "No need, baby." I got us. And I did, until the fall. The fall that changed everything. It was a cold morning in late October when I climbed up a 2-story house to fix a leak. I'd done it 1,000 times before. My hands were steady, my footing sure. But life has a way of changing in an instant. I don't remember much about the actual fall, just a sickening slip, my body tilting forward, then weightlessness. I hit the ground hard. The world went black. I woke up in a hospital bed, the ceiling spinning above me. Jasmine was there, holding my hand, her face pale with worry. "Baby," she whispered, her voice shaking. "You're awake." I tried to move, but pain shot through my back like fire. My legs felt wrong. The doctor came in a few minutes later, a middle-aged man with tired eyes. His voice was calm, too calm. "You've suffered severe spinal injuries," he said. "I'm sorry, but you won't be able to work again." The words didn't make sense at first. I kept waiting for him to say something else, to tell me there was hope, that with therapy I'd be back on rooftops in no time. But he didn't. Jasmine's grip on my hand tightened, but she said nothing. Her silence should have warned me. The first signs of change recovery was hell. Weeks passed, then months. I was in and out of physical therapy, but the truth was I wasn't the same man anymore. My body was broken, and with it, something inside me cracked too. I couldn't provide the way I used to. The bills piled up. The savings I had worked so hard for drained fast. Jasmine had to get a job, and I could see the resentment creeping into her eyes. She never said it out loud, but I felt it. I tried to help around the house, but what good was a man who couldn't even lift his own kids without struggling? Then came the late nights. At first, it was just overtime, extra shifts at the office where she worked as a receptionist. But soon she stopped coming home at all some nights. I'd sit in our dark living room, staring at the clock, waiting for her text. "Working late. Don't wait up." The kids would ask where Mommy was. I'd lie. "She's just busy, sweetheart. She'll be home soon." But deep down, I knew something was changing. I just never imagined how bad it would get. I sat by the window most nights, watching the driveway, waiting for her headlights to sweep across the yard. Some nights she came home well past midnight, tiptoeing through the house like a stranger. Other nights she didn't come home at all. At first, I convinced myself it was just the new job. She was working hard, maybe too hard, trying to make up for the money I could no longer bring in. I wanted to believe that. I needed to. But deep down, something felt wrong. The distance between us. Jasmine wasn't the same. The woman who used to curl up beside me at night, who used to laugh at my stupid jokes, who used to hold my hand just because. She was gone. She barely spoke to me anymore, always in a rush, always distracted. When I reached for her, she pulled away. When I tried to talk, she acted like I was in the way. One night I asked, "Baby, what's wrong?" She sighed, rubbing her temples. "Nothing, Daniel. I'm just tired." But it wasn't just tiredness. It was something else. I saw it in the way she avoided my eyes. I felt it in the coldness of her touch, when she let me touch her at all. I was losing her. My best friend. My brother. If there was one person I could always count on, it was Marcus. We'd been best friends since high school, closer than brothers. He was there at my wedding, the best man with the biggest smile in the room. When Aiden was born, Marcus was the first person to hold him after me. After my accident, Marcus was there too, always checking in, always making sure I had what I needed. "You good, man?" he'd ask every time he visited. I'd force a smile. "Yeah, I'm good." But I wasn't. Marcus started coming around more, offering to help with the kids, fixing things around the house that I couldn't anymore. He'd stay late sometimes, keeping Jasmine company while I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling like less of a man. I thought he was helping. I thought he was just being the brother I always knew. But I should have known. I should have seen the way Jasmine looked at him, the way she smiled at him, in a way she hadn't smiled at me in months. The night that made me wonder. One night, Jasmine came home even later than usual. It was nearly 3 a.m. I was awake, sitting in my wheelchair near the window. She didn't expect me to be up. She stepped inside, heels in her hand, hair a mess. "Where were you?" My voice was calm, too calm. She froze for just a second, just long enough for me to see it. Guilt. Then she scoffed, rolling her eyes. "I told you, I had to work late." "Till 3 in the morning." She sighed. "I don't have time for this, Daniel." She turned toward the stairs. "Jasmine." She stopped, but she didn't turn around. "You're lying," I said softly. "Aren't you?" She didn't answer. She just walked upstairs, leaving me alone in the dark, with a sick feeling in my gut that I couldn't shake. The beginning of the end. I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to believe that the woman I loved, the mother of my children, could do something like that. But the late nights, the distance, the way Marcus looked at her, the way she looked at him, the pieces were starting to come together. And soon I would know the truth, even if it destroyed me. The truth is, I think I already knew before I saw it with my own eyes. There are things a man feels in his gut, things he doesn't want to admit but can't ignore. The way Jasmine smiled when Marcus was around, the way her body leaned toward him without thinking, the way my best friend, my brother, stopped looking me in the eye. But knowing something deep down and seeing it for real, that's a different kind of pain. Unanswered questions. Jasmine barely spoke to me anymore. The woman who used to ask about my day, who used to curl up beside me on the couch, who used to kiss me just because, she was gone. And Marcus? He was around more than ever. At first, I told myself he was just helping. He was being a good friend, stepping up where I couldn't. He fixed things in the house, helped with the kids, took Jasmine out to get her mind off things. I told myself that was normal. But normal didn't explain the way she dressed up every time she went out with him. It didn't explain the way she laughed with him in the kitchen late at night while I lay in bed, pretending I didn't hear. It didn't explain the night I finally saw it with my own damn eyes. The night I knew. It was a Friday night. The kids were asleep. Jasmine had told me she was heading out for a quick drink with some of the women from her office. I didn't believe her, so I waited. Hours passed. Midnight. Then 1 a.m. Then I heard the sound of a car pulling into the driveway. I moved to the window and saw Marcus's car, my best friend, and Jasmine. She was in the passenger seat, laughing at something he said, laughing in a way she never laughed with me anymore. I should have stopped watching. I should have closed my eyes and turned away. But I didn't, because I needed to know. Marcus reached across the console, his hand brushing her cheek. And then, right there in front of our house, my house, he kissed her. Not just a kiss, not a mistake, not an accident. A slow, deep, hungry kiss. And she kissed him back, like it was the most natural thing in the world, like she'd done it before, like she belonged to him. A pain worse than the fall. I couldn't breathe. The room spun around me. My hands gripped the armrests of my wheelchair so tightly I thought my fingers might snap. I wanted to storm outside. I wanted to rip the door open, grab Marcus by the collar, and demand to know how the hell he could do this to me. But what could I do? I wasn't the man I used to be. I was broken, useless, trapped in this chair, in this house, in this nightmare that I never saw coming. I watched as they finally pulled away, as Jasmine touched his face with a tenderness I hadn't felt in months. Then she stepped out of the car, smoothed down her dress, and walked inside like nothing had happened. She was mine, wasn't she? I sat in the dark, waiting. She opened the front door and froze when she saw me. "You're still up?" Her lipstick was smudged. Her hair was a little too messy. I should have confronted her right then and there. But I was a coward. Or maybe I just wasn't ready for the truth. So I swallowed the pain and nodded. "Yeah, couldn't sleep." She let out a breath, almost like she was relieved. "I'm gonna shower." She disappeared up the stairs, leaving me alone in the darkness. And that was the moment I knew. I had already lost her. I barely slept that night. I lay there in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying what I had seen over and over again. The way she kissed him, the way he touched her, the way she smiled at him like he was the man she was meant to be with. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a one-time thing. It was real, and I was the fool who had been blind to it, pretending not to know. The next morning, Jasmine acted like nothing had happened. She made breakfast for the kids, kissed their foreheads, and laughed at some cartoon playing on the TV. She was light, free, like a weight had been lifted off her shoulders, like she had finally found happiness with him. I sat at the table, my hands clenched into fists beneath the surface, watching her. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask her, "How long? How long have you been doing this right under my nose?" But I didn't, because what if I wasn't ready for the answer? So I played along. I smiled when she smiled. I nodded when she spoke. I swallowed my anger, my heartbreak, and pretended. Because pretending was all I had left. Marcus, the best friend Marcus, came by later that afternoon. I was sitting in the living room, pretending to read, when I heard his voice at the door. "Hey, Jazz," he said, his tone casual. Jazz. That was my name for her. Mine. I gritted my teeth as she let him in, their voices low, familiar. Too familiar. "Daniel," Marcus said, stepping into the living room. "How's it going, man?" I looked up at him, the man I had trusted with my life. The man who had held my kids, laughed in my home, stood beside me at my wedding. And now he was sleeping with my wife. "It's going," I said, my voice tight. He nodded like nothing was wrong, like he wasn't betraying me in the worst possible way. I watched the way his eyes flickered to Jasmine, the silent exchange between them. The guilt he should have felt wasn't there, because he had already won. The walls closing in, days passed, then weeks. Jasmine no longer bothered to hide her late nights. She dressed differently, always putting extra effort into how she looked before she left the house. She laughed more, but not with me. She barely touched me, barely looked at me. I wasn't her husband anymore. I was just an inconvenience, a reminder of a life she no longer wanted. Aiden's question. One night I was putting Aiden to bed when he asked me something that shattered what was left of my heart. "Daddy?" "Yeah, buddy? Why don't you and Mommy hug anymore?" I felt like I had been punched in the gut. I forced a smile. "Mommy's just been busy, that's all." Aiden frowned, clearly not convinced. "But she hugs Uncle Marcus." I froze. My hands trembled as I tucked him in. "What do you mean?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. "I saw them," he said simply, "in the kitchen." She hugged him like this. He wrapped his small arms around himself, demonstrating. A deep, warm hug. The kind of hug she hadn't given me in months. I kissed his forehead and turned off the light, my insides burning with rage and sorrow. Even my son saw it. Even he knew. How much longer could I pretend? The moment I snapped that night, I sat in my wheelchair, waiting. Jasmine came home late, like always. She walked in, her heels clicking against the floor, smelling of perfume that wasn't mine. She didn't even look at me as she headed for the stairs. "Did you have fun?" I asked, my voice cold. She stopped, turned. Her face was unreadable. "What? Did you have fun with Marcus?" A flicker of something crossed her face. Annoyance, maybe, not guilt. "You're being ridiculous, Daniel." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Am I?" She sighed, rubbing her temples. "I'm too tired for this." She turned away, dismissing me like I was nothing. And that was the moment something inside me snapped. I couldn't keep pretending. I couldn't keep playing the fool in my own damn house. Because I knew the truth. And soon, everyone else would too. I woke up that morning knowing one thing. This had to end. I couldn't keep living in this nightmare, pretending I didn't know what was happening under my own roof. My wife, the woman I had given everything to, was in love with another man. And not just any man. My best friend. I needed proof, not for me. I already knew the truth. I needed proof so that when I confronted her, when I forced her to look me in the eye and tell me the words I already felt in my bones, she wouldn't be able to lie her way out of it. So, I did what any man with nothing left to lose would do. I set a trap. A plan to expose her. That afternoon, Jasmine told me she was going out. "Another late shift?" I asked, my voice laced with quiet bitterness. She barely glanced at me as she grabbed her purse. "Yeah, don't wait up." The same lie, the same routine. I nodded. "Okay, be safe." She hesitated for half a second, like maybe she felt bad. But if she did, she hid it well. Then she left. And I followed. The betrayal uncovered. It wasn't hard to find her. She wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. Marcus lived on the other side of town, in a sleek apartment complex that overlooked the city. And that's where she went. She didn't park a few blocks away. She didn't hesitate at the door. She walked right in, like she belonged there. I sat in my truck, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. This is it. This is your proof. I didn't know how long I sat there, staring at the building, feeling my heart crack wide open. Then, finally, I made my move. I grabbed my phone and called Marcus. It rang once, twice, then, finally, he answered. "Yo, Danny, what's up, man?" I swallowed the bile in my throat. "Where you at?" There was a pause, a careful one. "Just out, running some errands." Liar. I took a breath, steadying my voice. "You sure?" "Because I'm looking at your car right now." Silence. Long, heavy, damning silence. Then he sighed. "Danny, don't." My voice was calm. Too calm. "Don't lie to me. Not now." Another pause. Then, finally, "I'm sorry." 2 words. That's all he said. Not a denial, not an excuse. Just, "I'm sorry." Face to face with the truth. I didn't remember getting out of the truck. I didn't remember making my way inside the building. All I remembered was standing in front of Marcus's door, my chest rising and falling with quiet rage. And then I knocked, soft at first, then harder. The door opened, and there she was, Jasmine, wearing nothing but a t-shirt. His t-shirt. Her eyes widened in shock, her breath catching in her throat. "Daniel?" I pushed past her, my body trembling with fury and heartbreak. Marcus stood in the living room, shirtless, his face pale. He didn't even try to hide it. Neither of them did. Because why bother? The truth was right in front of me. "I wanted to be wrong," I said quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. I wanted so badly to be wrong. Jasmine closed her eyes, like hearing the pain in my voice hurt her, like she had any right to feel hurt. I turned to Marcus, my so-called best friend. "How long?" He looked away. "Danny, man, I didn't mean for this to happen. That's not what I asked." Jasmine swallowed hard. "A few months." I let out a slow, bitter laugh. Of course, a few months. Right around the time she stopped looking at me like I was her husband. Right around the time she started coming home late. Right around the time I became invisible. I turned back to her, my vision blurred with unshed tears. "Was it ever real?" My voice cracked. "Did you ever love me at all?" She hesitated, and that hesitation, that half-second of silence, was the only answer I needed. But then she said the words that shattered me completely. "It's always been him, Daniel." I felt the air leave my lungs. Marcus ran a hand over his face. "Jasmine, don't." "No." Her voice was firm. "He deserves to know." She turned back to me, her eyes filled with something close to pity. "I cared about you. I really did. But Marcus is the one I've always loved." I stared at her, trying to process the weight of her words. Always. Not just recently. Not just after my accident. Always. I shook my head, laughing bitterly. So, what was I? A backup plan? She didn't answer, because we both knew the truth. That's exactly what I was. The end of us, I stepped back, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. I turned to Marcus one last time. "You were my brother." My voice shook. "I trusted you." He had the nerve to look ashamed, but shame meant nothing now. Not after this. I let out a slow breath, my entire body trembling. "You two deserve each other." And then I left. I didn't look back. I couldn't. Because the life I thought I had, the love I thought was mine, had never been real to begin with. I don't remember driving home. I don't remember pulling into the driveway or rolling my wheelchair up the ramp and into the house. All I remember is the crushing silence, the home we built together, the pictures on the walls, smiling faces frozen in time, our wedding day, the birth of our children, happy moments that now felt like a cruel joke, because they weren't real. She was never mine. Telling the kids. The next morning, Jasmine came home. I heard the door open, heard her footsteps moving hesitantly through the house. I didn't look at her. I was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the cup of coffee I hadn't touched. She sighed. "Daniel, we need to talk." I laughed softly, shaking my head. "Now you want to talk?" She pulled out a chair, sitting across from me. "I didn't want you to find out like that." I finally looked at her. "How did you want me to find out, Jasmine?" My voice was calm, too calm. "Were you going to let me keep being the fool? Let me keep playing house while you ran around with Marcus?" She closed her eyes, exhaling shakily. "It wasn't supposed to happen this way." I clenched my fists under the table. "You had choices. You could have told me the truth from the beginning. But instead, you lied. You let me believe we had something real." She looked down, shame flickering across her face. But shame didn't change anything. "I need to tell the kids," I said. Her head snapped up. "Daniel, no. They deserve to know, Jasmine." My voice hardened. "We can't pretend anymore." She swallowed but didn't argue, because she knew I was right. Goodbye. Later that evening, we sat our children down. Aiden looked between us, his small face full of confusion. "Are you and Mommy mad at each other?" I forced a small smile, my heart breaking. "Mommy and I love you very much," I said carefully. "But things are going to change." Jasmine wiped at her eyes. "Daddy and I won't be together anymore." Tears welled in Ava's big, brown eyes. But why? I couldn't bring myself to say it. Jasmine cleared her throat. "Because sometimes people love different people." Aiden's face scrunched in confusion. "I thought you loved Daddy." Jasmine hesitated, and in that silence my son understood more than I ever wanted him to. Ava crawled into my lap, wrapping her tiny arms around me. "I don't want you to go, Daddy." I held her close, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "I'm not going anywhere, baby. I'll always be here for you." Because they were the only thing that mattered now. A new beginning. The divorce was finalized a few months later. Jasmine moved in with Marcus. I stayed in the house, my house, the house I built with my own 2 hands before life took everything from me. But I wasn't broken anymore. I was healing. Day by day, piece by piece. Because love may have betrayed me, but my kids never would. And in the end, they were the only love I ever truly needed. If this story moved you, like, subscribe, and follow this channel for more deeply emotional stories. Drop a comment and share what you would do if you were in this situation. Thank you for watching.